It was around 11:45 p.m., and I had just finished an overtime shift. Exhausted and starving, I decided to drop by the nearest 7-Eleven to grab something to eat before heading home. The streets were unusually quiet, but the dim glow of the convenience store sign made me feel a bit more at ease. The store was empty except for me and a lone cashier. The fluorescent lights flickered slightly, casting eerie shadows along the aisles. I made my way to the sandwiches section and grabbed a bottle of water on the way back to the counter. That's when I noticed someone standing at the far end of the store, near the entrance. The man was tall and wore a dark coat, with his head slightly tilted down, making it difficult to see his face clearly. He didn't move, just stood there silently, as if waiting for something. I felt a chill creep up my spine. Trying to brush it off as my imagination, I quickly paid for my food and gave the cashier a polite nod before heading out. But the moment I stepped outside, I realized something strange. The man who had been standing inside wasn't there anymore. I turned to glance back through the store's window, but there was no sign of him. I figured he might have left through the other exit while I wasn't paying attention, so I started walking toward home, taking my usual route through a small, dimly lit park. I was about halfway through when I heard footsteps behind me. They were slow and steady, matching my pace perfectly. I didn't want to turn around. I told myself it was probably just another late-night passerby heading home, just like me. But the steps didn't fade away. They stayed close, uncomfortably close. My heart pounded faster, and I felt my breath quicken. Summoning some courage, I glanced over my shoulder. No one was there. I picked up my pace, walking faster, but the footsteps returned. This time louder, faster, and echoing around me. They sounded like they were right behind me. I turned around again, this time with more urgency. And that's when I saw him. It was the man from the store, standing just a few feet away. His head was still tilted downward, his face obscured by the shadow of his coat. His body was unnaturally still, and his presence felt wrong, like he didn't belong there. "What do you want?" I asked, trying to sound braver than I felt. He didn't respond. Instead, he slowly raised his hand and pointed directly at me. His fingers were unnaturally long, bony, and pale. That's when I noticed something even more disturbing. His feet weren't touching the ground. He was hovering just an inch above it. I didn't wait to see what would happen next. I turned around and sprinted as fast as I could, not daring to look back. I didn't stop until I reached my apartment building, panting and drenched in cold sweat. I fumbled with my keys, unlocked the door, and slammed it shut behind me. Once inside, I double-checked the locks and sat on the floor, trying to calm myself down. I thought I was safe, until I glanced out the window. There, standing under the streetlight across the road, was the same man. His head was still tilted down, his figure motionless, but this time he slowly turned his head upward, revealing a face that wasn't human. His eyes were completely black, and his mouth stretched into an impossibly wide grin. I shut the curtains immediately, heart racing. I didn't sleep that night, and for days afterward, I avoided walking home alone. I even stopped going to that 7-Eleven. But what truly haunts me to this day is the fact that sometimes late at night, when everything is quiet, I can still hear footsteps outside my window. Slow, steady, and perfectly in sync with my heartbeat. The Stranger in the Elevator by Jake. My name's Jake. This happened about 6 months ago, and even now, it still creeps me out. I work late hours downtown, so though getting home around 1 or 2 a.m. is pretty normal, that night was no different. I was exhausted, my feet were aching, and all I wanted to do was crash into bed. The streets were quiet when I stepped off the bus. A cold breeze rattled through the empty sidewalks, making me zip up my jacket. My apartment building wasn't fancy, just a standard high-rise with a flickering lobby light that the landlord always forgot to fix. I pulled open the glass door and stepped inside, the warmth of the lobby hitting me instantly. The elevator was waiting, doors already open, as if it knew I was coming. I walked in and hit the button for my floor. Just as the doors began to close, a hand shot through the gap, forcing them open again. A man stepped inside. He wore a black coat, long enough that it almost touched his shoes, and carried a briefcase. He didn't say a word, just gave me a brief nod before standing in the middle of the elevator. His posture was stiff, his face partially obscured by the collar of his coat. At first, I didn't think much of it. Late night elevator rides were common in a building like mine. But then I noticed something strange. He never pressed a button. I glanced at the panel. Every floor button was unlit except mine. I felt a tiny spike of unease. Maybe he lived on my floor. Maybe he was just lost in thought. But something about his stillness, his silence, made my stomach tighten. The elevator climbed past the 3rd floor, then the 4th. Halfway up, the lights flickered and the entire thing jolted to a stop. For a few seconds, the darkness swallowed us. Then the emergency bulb kicked in, bathing the small space in a dim, yellow glow. I swallowed the lump in my throat and pressed the emergency call button. A crackling voice came through. Looks like a minor malfunction. We'll have you moving again soon. I exhaled in relief. Just a small glitch. Nothing serious. Then the man spoke for the first time. It's strange how things can stop working without warning, don't you think? His voice was low and even, like he was commenting on the weather. I forced a chuckle. Yeah, weird timing, huh? He didn't laugh. He didn't even move. He just kept staring straight ahead, his hands resting on the handle of his briefcase. The seconds stretched into minutes. The tiny elevator felt even smaller with him in it. The air seemed heavier. I could hear my own breathing, the faint hum of the emergency light, the occasional crackle from the intercom. I wanted to say something, anything, to break the silence, but the words wouldn't come. Finally, with a metallic groan, the elevator lurched back to life. The numbers on the panel flickered as we resumed our climb. My floor arrived and the doors slid open. I stepped out fast, too fast, but I didn't care. I just wanted to be out of that elevator. As the doors began to close, I turned back for one last glance. The man was staring right at me, and this time, he was smiling. Not a friendly smile, not a polite smile. It was something darker, something wrong. The kind of smile that sent a chill all the way down my spine. I hurried to my apartment, locking the door behind me. My hands were shaking. I didn't know why. It was just some guy, right? Just a weird, awkward elevator ride. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The next morning, I went to the building manager. Hey, I had a weird experience last night, I said, trying to keep my voice casual. Some guy in a black coat was in the elevator with me when it broke down. Just wondering if he lives here? The manager frowned. What apartment number? I hesitated. Well, that's the thing. He didn't press a floor, he just stood there. I thought maybe he was going to mine, but... The manager gave me a strange look, then turned to his monitor. Let me check the footage. I watched over his shoulder as the grainy black and white security footage played back the night before. I saw myself walking into the elevator. I saw the doors start to close, but no one else was there. The doors didn't reopen. No one stepped inside. I watched as the footage showed me standing in the elevator alone. The lights flickered, the elevator stopped, and I just stood there. Talking to no one. The hairs on my arms stood on end. The manager turned to me, his expression puzzled. Jake, you were alone in that elevator last night. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to think. All I knew was that I had felt him there. I had seen him smile, and somehow he had been real. The Stranger by Claire. Hey, I'm Claire, and I want to tell you about something that happened a few months ago. I was coming back home late one evening after visiting a friend. It was around 11:30 p.m., and the train station was practically empty. That alone gave me the creeps. As I stepped off the train, the cool night air hit me, and I could hear the faint rustle of leaves in the distance. I pulled my coat tighter around me and started walking toward my apartment, which was about a 15-minute walk from the station. At first, it was just the usual late-night quiet, streetlights flickering, the occasional sound of a car in the distance. But as I walked through a particularly dim stretch of the road, I noticed something strange. A man standing on the corner, completely still, just watching me. I tried not to panic. My neighborhood is generally safe, and it's not unusual to see people out late. Still, there was something about him that made me uneasy. He was too still, like he was waiting for something or someone. I crossed to the other side of the street, hoping to avoid him. As I did, I glanced over my shoulder, and that's when I noticed. He started moving, not running, not even walking fast, just a slow, deliberate pace, like he was in no hurry at all. But he was definitely following me. My heart started racing. I didn't want to run and make a scene, so I quickened my pace, hoping I could lose him by taking a few random turns. The streets in this area are a bit of a maze, with lots of alleys and side streets. I figured if I turned enough corners, I could shake him off. But every time I turned around, there he was. Always the same distance behind me, always walking at the same pace. I finally spotted a 24-hour convenience store at the end of the block. I practically sprinted toward it, my heart pounding in my chest. I burst through the door, startling the cashier, and tried to act normal as I pretended to browse the shelves. After a few minutes, I peeked outside. He was gone. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Maybe he was just some guy out for a late-night walk and I'd overreacted. I stayed in the store for another 5 minutes, just to be sure, and then headed back outside. The streets were quiet again, and I didn't see anyone around. This time, I stuck to the main road where the streetlights were brighter. I was about 3 blocks from my apartment when I heard it. Footsteps behind me, slow, steady. I didn't want to look back, but I couldn't help myself. When I did, my stomach dropped. It was him. Same man, same pace. He must have been waiting for me to leave the store. Now I was fully panicked. I didn't care about making a scene anymore. I broke into a run, my breath coming in short gasps as I sprinted down the street. My apartment was so close, but it felt like miles. Finally, I reached my building, fumbling with my keys as I tried to unlock the front door. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped them. Just as I managed to get the door open, I glanced back one last time. He was standing across the street, completely still, just watching me again. And then, he smiled. Not a friendly smile, but something cold, like he knew he'd gotten to me. I slammed the door shut and locked it, my heart still racing. I didn't sleep that night. I kept looking out the window, half expecting him to be standing there again. The next morning, I checked the street. There was no sign of him, and I haven't seen him since. But sometimes, late at night when I walk home from the train station, I still feel like someone's watching me.